Welcome to Remembering You, a space for slowing down, seeing again, and gathering the parts of yourself that the world asked you to forget.
Each week, we wander through stories, ancient, personal, and collective, to explore how perspective changes everything. How what we look at and how we look can open doors to who we truly are.
Take a breath, feel your feet.
You've arrived.
Let's begin remembering you.
Welcome.
Hi.
So today we are going to prove that the mind is separate from the body.
You're so funny. Is there a division somewhere that I don't know about?
Oh, wait, I read this wrong. Our body isn't separate from the mind. It's actually creating your experience. Oh, they're working together.
They are one.
So there's a connection when I am experiencing what seasoned meditators refer to as the monkey mind and the little fidgets and wiggles and twitches in my body that are involuntary.
Yeah, that's a good way to point to the ways that they are all the same. Our mind races and our body fidgets.
Mm-hmm.
We get uncomfortable in our own skin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we obviously touched on body and energy stuff last time, but there's so much that we didn't talk about. And so we wanted to do another episode. It's interesting how my social media feeds have been showing me, my social media feeds has always had somatic body awareness stuff. Lots and lots of people, therapists, just regular old people talking about the role that their body plays and their kind of ever growing awareness of it. But it's interesting how since we recorded our last episode, now my feed there's all these people saying, what do you mean? Like, aren't feelings just thoughts, essentially? Like, what do you mean my body has anything to do with this? or people who are sitting in their therapist's office and their therapist is like, where do you feel that in your body? And they're like, what the F do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's just this, it's almost like I don't even know how to connect that doesn't make any sense to me, which is very curious. Algorithms are fascinating. But I remember being one of those people. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting in a therapist's office and being kind of annoyed with the question, like, that doesn't make any sense. Why are you asking me that?
Mm-hmm.
And my own, as I started to follow the breadcrumbs, just experiencing my own reactivity and resistance and confusion and am I crazy? And what are these people doing? So anyway, I think it can be really helpful to have specific frameworks and language and science. And so that's part of what we're going to dive into today.
So just in a similar way that we might wake up to the more than human world, aka nature, and have a connection, or maybe recognize or realize that there is a connection with the natural world, or in our spiritual experience, there could be a waking up that something that, again, has been supportive or present all along, and we just didn't see it or experience it or feel it or have a name for it, or the threads that were connecting us were not visible in our experience. We can have that same experience with our physical body. It's interesting. I don't remember my body awareness turning on before I was a preteen or teenager. I think it was, probably puberty was when there was a realization of, oh, what is going on? Things are changing. I'm growing. And also it's interesting to note my mom had experienced and was experiencing some pretty intense health problems with chronic fatigue syndrome And there was an awareness of her physical limitations in that time frame. And so the body was coming online, or at least the awareness, waking up to the awareness of the physical body. I don't know if anyone ever asked me in my childhood, how does your body feel right now?
Yeah, aside from like, are you sick kind of way.
Or when I broke my arm, there was that awareness of my arm, but there wasn't awareness of what my arm was attached to.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty ubiquitous to be attuned to our body from that kind of, how am I physically, like how healthy am I? What's my energy level like? Like, am I tired today?
And pain.
Yeah, pain, fatigue. That of course is, I think, everybody's kind of got a baseline for the most part, awareness of that. But we're talking about something a bit more nuanced that has a whole lot more complexity to it. And it's you could think of it as the way your psyche shows up in your body, which sounds kind of strange, I imagine. And there's delightfully, there are people within the fields of psychology and neuroscience and other related disciplines that have asked that question and then found some pretty incredible answers. And of course, big caveat to say the answers don't take them too literally. So there's lots of critiques, as is healthy. I mean, this is what science does. Somebody puts forth an idea, other people push back against it. It gets refined over time. I think, how do I want to say this? All of this is coming out of a Western perspective. So it's going to have a bias to it, which is one of the biggest critiques that, the people on which these observations and experiments have been done are mostly white, educated, coming from industrialized countries, coming from democratic countries. And so we bring along with us all of our cultural biases. And so just, whereas if, we did maybe these same observations in tribal communities in Africa or in another collectivist kind of society, we might get very different results. However, that is not to say that what we do find is wrong, because more than likely, if you are listening, you are from a modern, industrialized, democratic, educated society. And so it's just reflective of experience in that way. And that there's, regardless if you're from an kind of an individually minded culture versus one who is oriented toward the group, either way, you are going to pass through particular phases in your childhood and in your adulthood that will show up in your body and how you move through the world and how you, like, the posture that you have, the facial expressions that you use, whether or not you feel free to speak your mind or whether your voice kind of gets caught in your throat, like whether you experience indigestion, beyond just like a physical, I have a stomach flu or something like that. But, so our mind shows up in our body in a million different ways. And so we're going to walk through a specific model, but just we're aware that it's not perfect and we don't want to use it like a hammer and then everything is a nail, but more just as a curious, what is that like for me? And as a way to help us orient.
I love your line, psychology lives in the body.
Yeah.
Our sensations, patterns, awareness, and ways of knowing. It's a good way to put it and kind of sit in inquiry.
Yeah.
How does psychology live in the body? Well, I feel like we have climbed to the very top of the high dive and we're looking down into the diving well now. My love, let's take a couple bounces and dive in.
Love it. Yes. So we're going to unpack a framework called Bodynamics that was developed by a physical therapist and a psychotherapist named Lisbeth Marcher, Marcher. She was from Denmark. And so first we'll give some context as to how this body of work came about, and then we're going to dive into the actual body of work itself. So this is in the 1970s, 1980s. At the time, the body-oriented lens of psychotherapy was pretty heavily dominated by a gentleman named, his last name was Reichian. And that operated, its main idea was the body, when things weren't going well, when you were stressed, you armored up, you got really tight, you braced yourself, and I'm sure we've all felt that. But she was noticing that not all of our emotional distress shows up as muscle tension. So sometimes we get super tense, but there are other times where we go numb and kind of flaccid or non-response. Like all of our energy just gets sucked out of us and we feel like we can't even hardly move. So the therapeutic interventions, let's say you're somebody who's had an experience like depression, for example. Anyone who's ever been depressed or sad knows just how drained you feel. And so the therapeutic intervention of, clench this rag and twist it really tight or punch this pillow or, how with the idea of, you must have chronic muscle tension and we therefore need to use the muscles in a particular kind of way. Like that didn't work if your body is responding in a way that is collapsed or overwhelmed. And so she teamed up with a group of about 12 therapists and other researchers. And over 20 years, they gathered more than 10,000 client and therapist session reports. And what they found were two main things. So they mapped rather systematically over 200 individual muscles that are in our body. They tested for, how tight or how relaxed or how maybe overly relaxed, like how flaccid is this muscle. And they correlated that with the exact age window at which that specific muscle came under voluntary motor control as we were growing up in childhood. So of course, brand new baby all they have is reflex. Like they'll have a startle response, but they can't voluntarily control any of their muscles yet. And of course, you gradually learn how to crawl and then you learn how to walk. And so all throughout our childhood, we're kind of gaining more and more muscle control and fine motor skills. So they mapped at what point are we able to move that voluntarily? And then what is the psychological function of that muscle? So for example, our triceps, when we need to push something away from us, we are engaging our triceps. I mean, other muscles as well, but that's the big one. Hamstrings are like when we have a drive and we want to get somewhere. There's other parts of our body that gets engaged when we feel like we need to hold our boundaries. And so she realized that our muscles are acquiring psychological significance at specific ages when we're learning how to control them. And so if there was a particular kind of stress during that developmental window, then the muscle's development can get complicated. And then that carries forward into adulthood if we never addressed it or if we didn't get support later, it just kind of stays that way. So we're not going to walk through like all 200 muscles or anything crazy like that, but we are going to talk about broadly what are the developmental stages and what are the muscles involved and just pose some questions about what's that like for you and do you feel any connection? Does it feel overly tense, maybe not strong enough or just right? And then we'll see where the conversation goes.
I love this. One of the surprises that I have had in the last 2 years was being in a car accident.
Yeah.
And
it was a really bad car accident too.
Long story short, somebody pulled out in front of me while I'm going 65 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And I have been in car accidents in the past as a passenger, and then once before I was sitting at a red light. And the red light, and that was back, it's been probably 15 years ago. The red light, somebody sideswiped me, and I saw them coming in my rearview mirror, and I couldn't do anything, and so I braced. I got tense. And that has been my MO when I see danger, or we could say that in a moment of stress, there is a bracing for impact.
Yep.
Because in my life, stress always leads to pain.
Of course.
Mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And my experience here with this recent experience in an automobile accident was to see the car dart in front of me, to hit my brakes. And as soon as it was only a fraction of a second of hitting my brakes, and then the rest of my body, I just went limp.
Mm-hmm.
So that the injury or the trauma to my physical body would have been a whole lot more intense if I would have been experiencing tension because of tensing
holding it.
My body, trying to hold myself up and back and brace for impact.
Yeah.
Instead, I let go, and so my chest strap caught my body, and I had a nice bruise across my front side. And I didn't have any of the head and the neck and the back and the shoulder pain that I had had from that accident from years ago, which was far less intense.
Mm-hmm.
Having somebody sideswipe me when I'm stopped at a stoplight versus T-boning somebody who went through a red light. That was a very unusual response, and I didn't have a moment to think about it, but my body just knew that that's what was to be done. And afterwards, when I walked away, I was just like, I don't know how I walked away. It took me a while to feel through and to think through that experience and ask the question, why? Then I had mental and emotional, I was in shock.
Yeah.
And physically, I was not in pain.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you were definitely sore for a while afterwards. That's to be expected. But you didn't have, it's not like your body was still bracing for the impact or still caught in a, just surrendered, utterly given up, can't have any, it's not like you didn't feel any energy in your limb. You returned to a normal, healthy, so to say, muscle tension versus surrender right away.
And from that car accident, or where I was sideswiped 10 plus years ago, I had to see a chiropractor for months trying to deal with everything being out of alignment and so much just neck and back pain that continued on. So it's fascinating that because I didn't brace and I let go, my muscles were not trying to keep my skeletal system in a particular way, and therefore had stress and trauma in a way that a much less traumatic, like physical, the energy of the experience was a lot less, the hit from the side. And that messed me up for months.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have lots of hypotheses about why, and it's fascinating.
So do I.
Yeah.
and I think developmentally, our experience, how we relate to impermanence or fear, definitely has a lot to do with being in a moment of uncertainty and what is our automatic response physically, like on a cellular level to that. And I would say it's normal and natural for us in our first half of life to respond with, I'm going to brace for impact and fight this with every cell and bone in my body. And then there is a different experience when there is a letting go, there's a surrender, and there is a acceptance to what is true. And it may sound like that's spiritualizing or somehow bypassing. I would say no, it's just the way that we are relating to our experience has direct impact. And for me, there was direct impact.
Quite literally.
on what is taking place in our physical body.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. So let's dive into the stages.
Mm-hmm.
There are
seven stages.
So there are 7 in all. Our thought is I'm going to break down the basics of each stage, and I imagine you're going to have lots of thoughts, stories, maybe some scripture or questions along the way. And we'll see what unfolds as we explore each of these stages. One thing I did not name about this framework is, and this is one of these things that I will encourage you to hold lightly and not take too literally, but it is an interesting dynamic to feel through. So it was thought that if the muscle is overly rigid, that meant that the stress in that developmental window came later, towards the later end of the windows. So developmentally, you had already gained some voluntary control over that muscle group, and then you experienced some kind of stress or trauma or challenge. And so the body, because you already had some control, it kind of clenched down on the control, and then that muscle became tight. So that was like a later developmental challenge. If the muscle under control is totally surrendered and flaccid, you experienced the developmental stress really early in when you were kind of figuring out how to use this muscle. And so the body just kind of gave up. And so the trauma, so to say, could be thought of as more severe or more deeply ingrained. That is one of these. So that, just hold that very lightly. It's an interesting idea, and it's a curious thing to feel through. And I don't know quite how, like, that is one of the challenges to this model, is just how true, so to say, that is. And that's one of those things that I think we could probably research for decades and decades and not have. Like, it just, human experience is super, super complex. So, but that is an interesting dynamic to add to this whole discussion, is what does the tension and the control mean versus the surrender, and I feeling low energy and like I can't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm. I think of my body developed patterns of holding.
Mm-hmm.
So tense.
Same.
Prepare for impact from my childhood, and collapse was not my way of survival. It was brace. I think of every spanking that I got in my childhood.
Same.
I did not go willingly. It was
fight the whole time.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
And there wasn't the awareness that this is just going to make it worse.
Oh,
and
sure.
It did.
Oh,
100%
yeah.
Made it worse.
Yeah, but you were strong enough to be able to push back and say, absolutely not, I don't like this. No. So
my butt muscles were very tense.
They still are.
That's because of exercise.
I know, I'm teasing. Lifting those weights. Okay, so stage 1 starts when we're still in the uterus, like within like second trimester, so to say. And so this is the other thing not to take too literally, is the windows. Of course, they're going to be slightly different for everybody, but sometime in the second trimester to about 3 months of age, the core psychological lessons that we're met with are: do I have a right to exist? Do I feel safe in my physical body? And do I feel like I belong to this world around me?
I love this because this is even before the brain is developed.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
there is a physical felt sense of, do I have a right to feel safe and exist? And it's measurable.
It is.
In the physical.
Before you're even born.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of those, I learned mostly about this realm of psychological development through therapeutic intervention called somatic experiencing, where they talked about prenatal trauma or stress it just blew my mind. And yet there was also something that already knew that was true, because I remember when I had Bianca, when I got pregnant with Bianca, I was 25. It was a terrible relationship. And I remember being always constantly aware of my stress level, and I knew that was going to impact her. And so
That's huge.
Yeah. And I didn't have to think about that. It just came online as soon as I found out I was pregnant, and especially once my belly started to show, because it was like really, I'm like, oh, I need to make sure that I'm not stressing myself out too much, and I need to really take care of myself as best I can, not just from a physical perspective, but an emotional one, because that, this little one is going to feel it. And of course, I didn't know anything about any of this, but so I think it's an interesting thought to feel through if you are somebody who has been pregnant or had children. Was there any kind of like maternal instinct that turned on for you? And I think for a lot of moms, I mean, I'm not the only one that I've ever heard say that. I think a lot of moms just now. And so it's interesting then what science comes along and finds out to sort of support that.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on what our experience was like when we were really, really little, do we feel like we have a right to exist in our body? Is our physical experience just fundamentally safe? We can either escape into our heads if it didn't feel very safe. In a sense, this physical experience feels too overwhelming, feels too uncomfortable, feels too unsafe. And so I'm just going to, like, the energy, and you can, map this in some really interesting ways, just gets sucked up into our heads. And, then we, as an adult, of course, we ruminate and we worry and we think too much. I imagine for those of you who are prone to overthinking, goodness knows I am, might be able to recognize the way that you can get caught or lost in your mental world and forget to attend to your physical body. Like, do you forget to eat? Do you forget to get up and go to the bathroom, and you don't realize it until your bladder's about to burst? Do you ignore whatever kind of physical symptom your body is giving you, and you're just all up in your head? Or if your existence feels okay, but if it has conditions to it, so if baby senses, for example, that I have to pay close attention to my caregiver in order to feel safe. So like, I'm allowed to exist so long as I hold myself together and so long as I'm monitoring your feelings. Then as an adult, they develop like hyper empathy, hypervigilance, constantly sensing the room's dynamics, constantly attuned to fear, rejection, stress, and they will tend to hold a lot of tension in the back of their neck and in their spine. So imagine, like, in a very real world adult kind of way, you walk into a room and you just instantly absorb whatever the mood is. Maybe you hold your breath, you kind of clench your neck. You're on guard just to make sure that everything stays peaceful and calm. So that's just some examples of how the early life, the very first thing that we have to learn is, am I okay to be here? And is it okay to have this body that I'm now in?
Mm-hmm. Over the years, as I've worked with people who are deeply devoted to a faith practice, and then also folks who are maybe going to fall in the camp of agnostic or atheist or unbeliever, there is a need that we have, that there is something that is ordering our existence.
Yeah.
And for someone who might fall into the I am just a secularist, humanist, that can be my DNA.
Oh, yeah.
My DNA has been charting my experience.
Yep.
And there is a resting or a letting go or a falling into for those. And that brings safety. Yeah. That brings a sense of connection. That gives, I have belonging, and there's purpose and intelligent design within my experience. And I use intelligent design intentionally because growing up in evangelical Christianity, there was this huge argument that we have come from intelligent design and not from evolution.
Sure.
So I'm using that, and I'm aware of that's charged for different folks from different persuasions and backgrounds. All of that to say, as a person who honors and treasures and loves the Hebrew and the Greek scriptures, there is this theme that comes through, and it starts off in the book of Jeremiah, where it says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Mm-hmm. Before you were born, I set you apart." Mm-hmm. And that theme continues through Psalm 139, Isaiah 49, into the Gospels, Luke chapter 1, and then Galatians chapter 1, verse 15. The beautiful imagery in the book of Jeremiah is that before you were born, there was a knowing. Mm-hmm. And the word in the Hebrew is yada, and it is the most intimate and personal way of knowing. It is experiential knowing from the inside out. Mm-hmm. And so someone who has had trauma and great suffering in their life, to be able to go through a process of resting into the knowing that gives a sense of none of this is random or purposeless, or like I am going somewhere, I have come from somewhere. Mm. And that can bring safety in a deep, deep way that we need for our little lives. And then as we grow up in big bodies, just to know that it's safe for me to exist.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So clinically, what maybe a therapist, or, whether you're a psychotherapist or a physical therapist, would do, let's say so for example, if you've ever had a massage, you know how when sometimes you're on your back and they'll cup their hands under your head and they'll hold, so there's that ridge, the point where your brain kind of pokes out above your neck. Having that spot held and being able to release into it, like that provides a sense, like my whole body just instantly, my heart opens, everything relaxes. It is so comforting. And this is partly why, so that's like one of the muscles where this kind of psychological understanding, feeling, experience lives. Or if you've ever used weighted blankets, so that feeling of being pressed very firmly down into the ground while yielding to that gravity. So if you can like surrender to, this is getting at the most fundamental feeling of that exists at the stage of development, so to say, like I am safe to belong in this body. And so we're not just relaxing like from a sense of, I'm relieving my stress and I'm going to chill out. It is like feeling our physicality being pushed down and being held up by the physical floor underneath us and supporting our body is doing something to ourselves psychologically that is really important. It's grounding fundamentally. Mm-hmm. And so if you are somebody who just struggles to feel okay in your own skin, or if you're somebody who tends to float off up into your head, doing something like just orienting to the room around you, just noticing like what objects are close by, what's another object that's maybe a little bit further away, and just feeling your physicality in the chair and recognizing like gravity is holding me down and this chair is holding me up. Like those are all physical cues that we can give our nervous system to just relax and feel a sense of safety and calm.
Mm-hmm. Before my divorce, I never took baths.
Oh, interesting.
I was not a bath person since my childhood. But after the warm water, lighting a candle or two in the bathroom, having quiet music play, I could soak for hours. And it was therapeutic in a physical way that I had never experienced before. Contrast the bathtub still water, closed, confined space. And recently taking a trip to the Texas coast and being in the ocean.
Yeah.
And the waves, and it is a different surrender and letting go. And also, there is a different way of relaxing into that that is definitely not the same as a bathtub. And it will quickly point to where, at least my experience is, where my growth edge in relationship to surrender. Can I surrender to something that I can't see the bottom? I can't see what's around me because it's churning and frothy and I'm in big waves. And if I let go and relax too much, I'm going to get flipped and I'm going to have waves crashing over me. And there's a different relationship between the ocean and a bathtub.
Yeah. I mean, I would argue those are probably different developmental stages that's getting pointed at. You know, bathtub feels very womb-like. It's very closed, warm, pretty gentle, whereas ocean is like almost the opposite, which is such a curious thing to feel through. The next stage you could think of as
needs. Do I have a right to have needs? Is it okay for me to ask for help?
And when I do I receive care, nourishment, attention? So this is around the first month of life to about a year and a half. And so it's also important to note that these stages overlap one another. And of course, again, don't take them too rigidly. But generally, when we're about a month old, that first year and a half of life, and you think about what a baby is doing, they can't use words. They don't have language to say, my diaper is wet or I feel hungry. All they can do is cry. And they give all kinds of, physical, facial expressions, and, their hands do things, and parents hopefully are very closely trying to figure out what are they communicating. And it's essentially that dance between the infant and the parent. There's a need that I have. Can the parent meet that need? And therefore, do I feel safe to express the needs that I have? So if from the very beginning, so to say, if early in this developmental stage, if the needs were ignored, if they were met too inconsistently, or if when the parent came to meet the need, they were super stressed, or maybe they punished me, yelled at me for for crying or whatever, then the muscles that are starting to come online kind of surrender. They just give up. Because in a sense, they learned nobody's coming to meet my needs, and so I'm just going to give up asking for it. The muscles that we use to reach, so our biceps, our reaching muscles, we might get kind of flaccid hands and chest muscle tone. As an adult, it can feel like I don't quite know what it is that I want or need. It's not just that I don't know how to ask for it. It's I have a hard time even identifying what it is I need in the first place. Or when I do feel like asking for help feels like a burden on other people. Versus later in the developmental stage, maybe the child learned that my needs are only met if I demand them very loudly, or if I just take care of it on my own, in my own kind of way. So in a sense, I have to fight to get my needs met, or I just got to do it all by myself. So we become kind of tight and our tight fingers, tight forearms, tight jaw. As an adult, it can show up as fierce independence or very demanding. There can feel like a deep fear of being deprived or being cheated, or having to work too hard to just get our needs met. And so maybe that shows up like somebody who does everything themselves, but then complains that nobody, they have this resentment that the world or other people doesn't do a very good job of meeting my needs. So it's an interesting thing to feel through. Do I feel like, can I even notice my needs? Do I feel like it's okay to ask for them to be met either by other people in my life or just the world around me. So this isn't just partners and friends. This is also workplace or, government institution. This is also the systems, the culture at large that we belong to. What's my relationship between the needs that I have as an individual and all of the different levels and layers? Because no one is an island and we all depend on one another. And so what's that relationship like?
Mm-hmm. Healthy relationships require both receiving and giving.
Yeah.
And learning to recognize, express, and receive care for our needs is probably one of those lifelong learning places in our life where we practice. And it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of I'm growing.
Intelligence in a way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Rumi often talks about generosity, give and take, flow of love. He doesn't really use psychological language, but he does point to give and take in our experience, such as here's one of his lines: "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it." A healthy relationship requires both receiving and giving.
Reciprocity.
Yes,
yeah.
Very much so. Try not to resist life's changes. Let life flow through you.
Yeah.
And that encapsulates a coin that has two sides, and one is give and one is take.
And I would argue the capacity for reciprocity rests on a ground of knowing and understanding I as an individual have needs, and those needs are valid. And I feel okay to just even have the needs that I have and to turn to others and to the world around me for support and for interaction and for that. I mean, that's what kind of opens up that back and forth. And we learned that very, very early in life. And it's not to say that, of course, all of this comes along with the giant asterisk of you can have really challenging early life experiences and then later in life met somebody or been part of a group that kind of repatterned that for you. So it's not to say that, like we're doomed from our childhood experiences, but if it didn't go well earlier on, there's probably some repair that needs to be done at some point in life. And if we've never encountered that, maybe we're starting to wake up and recognize like, oh, I have trouble with give and take. I feel like, I don't have enough to give, or maybe like I feel like I'm over giving and nobody's giving in return. And so it's like, is that balance between that reciprocity? How healthy is that?
Rumi has given me a picture over the years that love is like a breath.
Oh.
But it's not a held breath. It's an inhale followed by an exhale. We receive so that we can give, and we give so that we can allow life to flow through us. And just like our breath, whenever movement stops, love becomes a possession or a depletion. Love is a breath, not a held breath.
Not a held breath. That's great. It is interesting how in meditation, like the breath is such a powerful doorway that shows us so much about how we feel in our own skin and how we relate to others in the outside world. And I mean, I remember when I was first practicing meditation, like paying attention to my breath felt so uncomfortable. I had so much resistance and I just did not understand like why is this is something just so normal and mundane in everyday life. And as soon as I put my conscious attention on it, it's like I get all of this anxiety and reactivity and I don't wanna, and it's like, oh, that's curious. So yeah, it's funny how those simple little things can be such big teachers.
Stage 2 is need. And then we move into stage 3.
Yep.
Which we call it autonomy.
So around 8 months to 2.5 years. So we're figuring out how to walk, well, crawl, then walk, then run. And we're also, because we're gaining more motor control, it's like we see something across the room. Maybe we've got a favorite toy and we're like, I want to go get that. So autonomy is about to move away. Do I feel like I have my own ground to stand on? Can I go explore? Do I feel like it's okay to go explore? Do I have that drive maybe? And does the connection that I need stay intact? So can I both be connected and independent? So our first experiences of learning how to crawl, learning how to take our first step, if parents were not, maybe they weren't supportive enough, they weren't around, we didn't have their attention, or if they were super worried and hyper little helicopter parent during this stage of development. So if we had like early stage stress, this is where the muscles kind of give up. So it's like I will give up my independence to maintain the connection to mom or dad or whoever's around me. And so as an adult, maybe we spend the entire weekend helping our friends move, even though I am completely exhausted, because to say no makes us feel really guilty, for example. So that's kind of a psychological manifestation of maybe some complexity happening at this stage of development. Later, if we gain some motor functioning skills, we're walking around and we're in toddlerhood and our caregivers are trying to over-control or to smother our independence. This is where the rebelliousness comes online. It's like, yeah, I will give up my connection to you to save my freedom. And so it's like, I'm not going to give in to your demands. It's more important for me to stay autonomous. And so as an adult, maybe we can be a little non-committal. Rules feel like cages to bind us in. So we're hypersensitive to being managed, and we'll just reflexively push back against rules or against too much closeness and intimacy. So the muscles at this stage are like our triceps, our quads, our glutes. It's like all of the muscles that we use to stand, to walk, to push stuff away.
It's important that we recognize that stage 2 is need and stage 3 is autonomy. Mm-hmm. One is grounding and one is freeing. Mm-hmm. Or loosing. It can feel like when we are maybe reparenting ourselves or making space or allowing our inner child to develop or mature and revisiting the needs for autonomy, that the language isn't, I don't need anyone, but rather I'm learning to stand on my own 2 feet. And I'm also learning that I never have to stand alone. Mm-hmm. Or leave dependence without leaving belonging. Mm-hmm. Or become your own person so that you can truly serve your people. Mm-hmm. Or walk your own path while remaining faithful to your tribe. In our world of John Wayne riding off into the sunset on the back of a horse.
Hyper independence.
Freedom is not the absence of relationship. It is the ability to choose relationship. And as I reflect on indigenous cultures versus our Western way of looking at things, I'm reminded that my conditioning has been to ask the question, who am I? Mm. Who am I? When there are peoples who are connected to the earth and the seasons in a way that they are conditioned to ask, who are my people and what is my gift to give them? And that's a direct connection to the earth and the seasons and watching the patterns as one season rolls into the next and what is needed for the next has been prepared in the previous. Yeah. And it continues to move forward. I also witness this idea of autonomy playing out within men's lives in the context of rites of passage.
Mm.
And the mentality or philosophy of the first half of life being, I have to create myself, my world, my worth, to letting go of that built ego persona, and experiencing that initiation isn't about proving you're good enough to go alone, but it's about discovering you belong to something that is greater than yourself. And that's straight out of Richard Rohr's book, Adam's Return, that gives us a lot of hints and guesses as to what it means to be an individual self that is rooted and grounded in something greater than ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where our relationship to boundaries starts to get formed, both within ourselves and then in relationship with other people. Like, do you remember that you were preparing for one of your men's retreats? I think you were facilitating, and I showed you the yes-no game that we played in Authentic Relating, where let's say we start 6-7 feet apart and I tell you to come a little closer, and then I hold up my hand and say no. And so I'm feeling the energy of you get closer or closer or further away, and I'm just noticing how that is for me. And then, of course, like, what's it like between the two of us? And so there's just this interplay of what do I need and where is my autonomy, and what's it like to feel you come closer and to feel you stop when I say no. Like, there's so much there. And it was just a delightful, I think we did it for, I don't know, all of 30 seconds. And none of this is cognitive. I guess.
It's all felt.
Yeah. And that's just like one little, we're constantly aware of that at some level. We're always monitoring. Where am I? Where are other people? How close are we? Do I like this? Think of grocery store checkout line. Do we get annoyed when somebody's standing practically right on top of us, behind us, waiting to get their stuff on the conveyor belt? This thing like that, that's like a little, there's this sense of autonomy within us, but also this need, so to say, the developmental level below it, where we need to be connected to one another. And these two things are interacting all the time. And I think that's what your pointer of first half of life and second half of life, like, that's kind of a broader, more systemic way that this same thing shows up, just in a different phase of life or in a different kind of level.
Joseph Campbell puts it this way: the hero or the heroine, I'll add the heroine, leaves the village to discover who they are, but the journey isn't complete until they return bearing gifts for the community. And that is what true autonomy is.
Yep. That's what it's preparing us for. Yes.
Yep.
As we'll see when we get to the end stage of this, where our developmental levels are all bringing us back to contributing to something greater than ourselves.
So perhaps even the word autonomy has been misunderstood. We often imagine that it means not needing anyone, but every authentic initiation tradition says something different. Yep. The purpose of growing up isn't to become separate. It's to become, I like this word, capable. Capable of saying yes, and also capable of saying no.
Yep.
Capable of leaving, and then also capable of returning. Capable of carrying your own weight while helping carry the weight and the needs of your community. So mature autonomy isn't isolation, it's belonging without losing yourself.
Very well said. So after autonomy, stage 4 is will, the right to make choices, to have your personal power, to express, here's what I want to do, or I feel angry, or I feel excited, and to carry that responsibility without losing connections. It's similar to autonomy. It's like what can then be what then on. So you'll notice maybe that each of these stages are kind of getting more and more complex. So will comes online around age 2, lasts till around age 4. So think of, we call it terrible twos or terrible three. This is where the little one says no or I want, and they get very insistent sometimes on exerting their will. And this is what they're learning. Hopefully, maybe the impulse is, I want, who cares what anybody else thinks, because of course when you're 2, like you can't think of like literally neurobiologically, you can't take another person's perspective. You're only concerned with your own. And so the job of an adult is to be able to meet, like to support that healthy expression of I want or no or yes, while also teaching them, you have to share your toys with your brother or your sister, or you have to say, I'm sorry if you hurt somebody's feeling, you get socialized in that way. So if early in this stage, our attempts at expressing our intentions or what it is that we want were met with really harsh discipline, if we were shamed, then in a sense, what we are implicitly taught is that my power destroys the connections around me. So I will surrender my choice and I will carry your burden instead. And so physically this shows up abdominal walls, lower back, shoulder muscles. So think of collapsed chest, a collapsed core. Maybe as an adult, we feel helpless to change our life's circumstances. We take on immense physical or emotional burdens for others until we just like literally kind of collapse under the weight of it. Or if later in this developmental stage, maybe 3 or 4 years old, we developed some capacity to say no or to speak what we want, to have that force of will, to use our power. And then we were pushed back against. We will then kind of like double down. We're like, fine, I will prove my strength and I will win this battle of will. And so we really butt heads. This could show up as an adult as perfectionistic, as critical, as hyper capable, kind of treating life as a contest of strength or moral superiority, struggling to accept help because doing it right means I have to do it myself. So maybe if we've ever been subject to somebody's micromanaging at work, we know what this feels like.
Mm-hmm.
And so that maybe if we can just feel into our use of power and how freely, like, does power feel safe? Do we have an easy relationship with it? Or do we tend to use power over? Or do we give up our power? So like what's that like in your life?
Mm-hmm. So as a man, I have grown up knowing what it feels like to naturally have power over.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm also 6'2".
Yep.
So when I am working with a hospice patient who maybe is in a hospital bed or in a wheelchair, I am towering over them if I'm standing.
Yeah.
And there are times where even sitting in a chair, I am still physically power over them. And I will lean forward or I will take a knee beside so that there's the experience of power with not having that physical dynamic of being over, inviting their will to be expressed or felt, or in a physical representation, holding space for them with my physical presence.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
One of the practices that has helped me in recognizing how much power over is just normal and natural, and I don't even recognize, like it's just the air that I breathe or the water that I'm swimming in, is a practice where I have done this with other men in the past. We'll stand about 12 to 14 feet apart, and one man will be stationary, and his job is to say stop. And he'll start saying it quietly, and the person on the other side is taking slow steps towards him. And each time a step is taken, the elevation and the intensity of stop continues until the man who is walking is in the face of the man who is now screaming stop.
Oof. That's big.
And it is something that can help, and it's helped me feel the energy of become more sensitive to how easy it is to just walk right through somebody, whether they're verbally saying no or physically saying no. As men, we don't always have that attunement or awareness to the I was going to use the word lesser or smaller or not as domineering in presence. And anyone who knows me or has worked with me will be like, Ryan, you're not Mr. Power Over trying to dominate everybody you are in the presence of. And because I didn't grow up in a situation where the roles were reversed relating to gender, it wasn't a matriarchal environment that I grew up in. It was patriarchal. And so I am just very aware of the path that is my past and history.
Yeah.
So that's one exercise that works. From a nature perspective, I love the metaphor of the river. Mm-hmm. A river doesn't look at a mountain and say, I am going to dominate you. I am going to force my way up the banks and take you over. A river just simply continues flowing. And over time, it will cut through rock and make canyons, but it's not like this, I have to prove something. It's just steady and confident and continues to return. And that's what I think about healthy power isn't domination. And it's also not being helpless. It's the ability to make a choice and to express ourselves in honest and sometimes vulnerable ways that can both serve who I am and also serve those who are around me as well.
It's interesting as I was feeling through that exercise you were talking about where the person
stop louder and louder.
Like if we were in a different context and I was not sitting in front of a microphone, I could have very easily just burst into tears. Recognizing all of the times that I have said stop, either energetically or verbally, and it has not been honored. Mm-hmm. And of course, as women in society, that's a pretty frequent experience. And, hence the rise of feminism. And it totally makes sense to me why usually when women are, if they were subjected to unhealthy use of power, and then they're finding their voice, it usually takes the form, you think of like the angry feminist where they're like, and it's overcompensation for years and years of, and that's healthy and understandable.
The pendulum needs to swing.
The pendulum needs to swing, and then it needs to kind of find its way back to some sort of equilibrium. And so I guess it's just as I was paying attention to my own reactivity, it's like, oh yeah, there's definitely still work here for me to be to do and to continue to just my nervous system definitely collapses in this area more than I am not a power over. I don't double down, and my rebelliousness is more like the stage before this. And so this in me, and similarly, like in my professional sphere right now, I'm figuring out business development side of things. So as an independent consultant, what does it mean to approach other businesses or other people and talk about what it is that I do? That ticks this insecurity as well. Like it lives in the same place in my body. And it's interesting. I hadn't made that connection until just now. So there's all kinds of ways that our early life patterns just keep showing up, keep giving us opportunities to see them and to work with them. And so,
From nature, I have one more observation. The way the salmon swims upstream when it's time for spawning. Every year, they move against these powerful currents of mountain rivers and streams, not because they enjoy the struggle. Like their will is tested over and over again because they're responding to something deeper that's written into their nature. And that's returning to home.
yeah.
And that is a beautiful illustration of finding our own will and following through no matter what the obstacle or opposition.
Well, it is such a, I don't know if you planned it this way, but the stage that comes next is love and sexuality. So it's interesting how the salmon or shrimps are like using their will to then, because the whole reason they're doing that is to go procreate. So I don't know if that was one of your little magician moves or not, but well done.
Magician never gives away his secrets.
Nope. So the next stage is about love and sexuality, which probably sounds a little strange since we're talking about age 3 to around 6. What this is really about, I mean, obviously little kids are not trying to procreate. That would be wildly inappropriate. It is about passion, heart-centered warmth, love, and also like think of when a little kid gets super into something, anything, bugs, trains, flowers, the color pink, music, whatever. They start to, and they also start to develop deeper bonds and friendships. And they're also figuring out that like a boy is a boy and a girl is a girl. And what does that mean? So they're getting all kinds of gender lessons. They're aware maybe for the first time that like girls are different from boys. And of course, then there's the fact that not all kids are born with very distinct girl or boy parts. Like some kids are born with both or with kind of a, there's intersex things that happen at this stage too that will complicate this stage of development. But essentially, is it what they're learning is it safe to feel my heart open and to feel my passion, or do I have to separate myself from my desires in order to stay connected and to stay safe? If the early phase of their gender identity or discovery of sensuality and desire and heart opening, like if that was rejected or if there was lots of shame, if the adults around us weren't comfortable with that kind of vitality and exploration, then as an adult they might split romance and physical sex. So they might idealize kind of romantic love from afar, but struggle to really feel the intensity of deep emotional intimacy and physical passion all in the same relationship. So think of like porn. That's a great kind of manifestation of the ways that the stage goes sideways. Or if later in the stage, if our connection with our caregivers became dependent on physical beauty, physical charm, performance in some kind of way, we learn I am loved for my appearance, my charm, my attraction, then, we might become overly flirtatious. It's almost like our whole body becomes built for presentation and appeal. We become overly sexualized. And so like I was at a social gathering last week, and there was this woman who I had never met her before. She came up and introduced me and she was in her mid-20s, probably late 20s, so absurdly flirtatious and sexual. And I could tell she was not aware that that's what she was doing at all. It was so uncomfortable. She told me, she's like, has anyone ever told you you look like Meryl Streep? I was like, yes, I have gotten that quite a lot. I was like, my best friend growing up in middle school and high school, her grandfather called me Meryl. And she's like, oh, you're just a dead ringer. You know, she was this breathy voice, and she was just like writhing in front of me. I was so uncomfortable. I was like, oh, girl. Nice to meet you. Tone it down. Anyway, I was like, oh, that's developmentally interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like, one of the ways it shows up. It's just our relationship with desire and love and sexuality. It starts really early, really, really early. And we get all kinds of weird. Our culture has all kinds of fucked up messages for sex and love, and anything from porn to Carl's Jr. ads for cheeseburgers with the bikini model. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So we as a society have a lot to figure out in this area.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference, and this is a nuance, between objectification
Mm-hmm.
and appreciation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Having teenage boys, I watch them react and respond to their own bodies, and then also when women, younger girls their age are around, there is a way that they respond, and they're figuring things out.
Yep, absolutely.
From Greek mythology, we could pull a couple maybe lessons or ways to reflect or to hold this idea of love and sexuality and how it plays out in our bodies. We have the myth of Eros and Psyche.
Oh, yeah.
And the myth is, I would say, maybe a near perfect example of how this plays out, because as they fall in love, then fear and scarcity and insecurity begin to build a wedge, and it separates their connection and being together. And Psyche ends up undergoing a series of difficult tasks before the lovers can be reunited. Not because she has to earn love, but because she is becoming capable of receiving and sustaining it. Mm. And that is an important part of our human development, is seeing that it's not that I have to earn love from a special someone or from a group of individuals, but there is a process of becoming capable of receiving and also sustaining that love. The other thing that's fun to note is across myths and sacred stories, love is never portrayed as merely finding the right person, but rather it's portrayed as becoming the kind of person who can love, whether it's Psyche completing the impossible tasks or others throughout mythology. Every story points to the same truth. Mature love takes us to a place where we integrate our heart, our body, and our vulnerability with our desire. When love and sexuality are united rather than divided, intimacy becomes not just pleasurable, it becomes transformation.
Profoundly. And again, it's like our capacity for love and sexuality rests on our will, our autonomy, our needs. We're building something like a profound vehicle to move through life. And so I guess it's just helpful to appreciate just how many moving parts there are and the way that they all get related to one another and the way they all move through us. And I say that not so that it feels daunting or overwhelming, but more, it's like an opportunity, a profound, enormous, beautiful opportunity for growth and expansion and nuance and subtlety, and we're never going to be bored exploring this at all. And so to just be very kind and take it slow and maybe have some compassion for ourselves and compassion for other people. But this is all a really rich landscape.
And these 7 stages are not the destination, but rather they're signposts. Although, hey, let's camp out on love and sexuality. I'm happy with that.
Revisited frequently.
Stage 6.
Yes.
My opinion is that we should camp out on love and sexuality.
Stage 6 is about opinions, ages 5 through 12. So the right to form our personal ideas, to express them publicly, to stand by them when we get challenged. So we're learning. So think of voice. So we could translate all of this into the yogic kind of chakras. So we're moving from the heart up to our voice, and we're figuring out that I have opinions. And of course, underneath that is our needs and our desires and our will to express them in the first place, and our use of power. And do the ideas I express, do they cause conflict and ridicule? Did I learn early in life if I spoke out consequences, and so therefore I won't express? Or, maybe it wasn't until later on, I gained some capacity to express my ideas, and then later on in that developmental stage, they got challenged. And so do I feel like I have to double down and defend my ideas to the death so my mind is never undermined or overridden again? So somatically, this shows up in our throat, our vocal cords, our chest expansion muscles. If things were more stressful early on as an adult, we might feel like, I don't really know what I think. Like I just, my voice just doesn't even really ever feel like it can come. So do I go quiet during a group discussion? Do I struggle with public speaking? Do I lose my train of thought when I'm challenged? Or so maybe later developmental kind of stressor showing up as, do I turn just a casual conversation into an intellectual battle? Do I hold really rigid beliefs? Do I feel like I need to be proven right? Am I debate oriented? And so just what is my relationship like with expressing my opinion and having the ideas that I have? Do I feel like I can bring them into the world, or do I have to fight with them every way?
Stage 6 was, and specifically my throat chakra was, I was going through healing and coming online as my first marriage was coming to an end, and not afraid anymore to call a spade a spade. And even though that was an incredibly disruptive experience in my life of marriage coming to an end, there was also a clarity to be able to say what was true in my experience over and over again, and not shrink or fall back away from that. In children's stories, this stage reminds me of the cute little story of the emperor's new clothes. And the danger of groupthink and the power of just unvarnished, non-filtered perspective and wisdom and understanding and clarity. The emperor commissions a tailor to make the most magnificent, beautiful clothing that had ever been worn by a monarch. And they were so magical that if you were dumb, stupid, an imbecile, you wouldn't be able to see how beautiful and majestic these clothes were. So only the most sophisticated, smart, high society, brilliant people could see just how outstanding these clothes were. And so, long story short, the king is wearing his birthday suit and on a little parade. And everybody in the kingdom, of course, knows they've all heard that if you're smart, you're going to be able to see the clothes. But if you're not, then you won't be able to see the clothes. And as the king is parading through the kingdom, everybody is just giving him high accolades and praise for not only how smart he is, but how smart his clothes look. And there's a small child in the crowd who notices that, hey, mommy, why is the king naked and not wearing any clothes? And that awareness of, oh, my opinion had been co-opted and manipulated and controlled, and I was not allowed to speak what was true, but was conditioned and told to me that this is what I had to believe. So the emperor's new clothes is a great little illustration for this waypoint of speaking our opinion, learning to express our voice with courage while remaining open enough to listen, learn, and be challenged by others.
Well, and I think of how our workplaces and particularly the political sphere is such a fascinating area to see this back and forth between people, and how does the person in power need other people to constantly be praising them and telling them what wonderful clothes they have on and not ever pointing at their flaws? Or is there a capacity, versus someone else who is in a position of authority and can speak what is true, doesn't need to attack, belittle, can do so with a grounded voice? Like there's just a clarity and a clearness and a calm that, wouldn't matter if somebody else said, oh my gosh, that's the most terrible thing. And they have a knowing that voice is expressed from, versus another one who reacts and attacks or just collapses, goes silent. Like how we use our voice is there's so much there.
The Buddha was asked a question and he wasn't answering the question. And it made this follower and philosopher just really angry and frustrated. And his statement was, unless you answer these questions, I'm leaving your community.
Oh.
And the Buddha replies with a story. Imagine a man walking through a forest when suddenly an arrow flies from the trees and pierces his chest. His family rushes to help and sends for a physician to remove the arrow. But the wounded man refuses. He says, wait. Before anyone pulls out the arrow, I need to know who shot me. Was it the nobleman, a merchant, a farmer? How tall was he? What color was his skin? What kind of bow did he use? What bird supplied the feathers? What wood was the arrow made from? What poison was used in this poison arrow? The physician pleads, if we don't remove the arrow now, you will die. But the man insisted that every question be answered first. The Buddha concludes that man would die before ever learning the answers. Then he turned to the student and said that many philosophers' questions are like that. Whether the universe is eternal or not, whether consciousness continues after death, whether reality is infinite or finite, none of these answers remove the suffering that is happening right now. Buddha taught that his concern was much more important. There is suffering. There are causes of suffering. There is the possibility of freedom, and there is a path that leads to freedom. This story isn't telling that questions are bad. It's reminding us that some questions help us live while others become distractions that keep us from living. So as a child, we discover the power of our own ideas. As adults, wisdom asks a different question. Which conversations actually reduce suffering? Maturity isn't measured by how many arguments we can win or how many opinions we can defend. It's measured by whether our words bring greater clarity, compassion, and freedom.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I know the trap of asking all the questions.
I have found in my life it is safer to be the one asking the questions. And lastly, stage 7.
Mm-hmm. Solidarity and performance. So balancing our group belonging with our individual excellence. Are we collaborating or are we competing, essentially? So this is around age 11 to about 16. If early in our adolescence, if standing out from the group or excelling in some kind of way led to bullying, being ostracized from the group, essentially we learn, oh, if I excel at something, then I'm going to get ostracized, so I'll just stay invisible. So we hide our talents, we avoid leadership roles, we don't want to be the center of attention, we feel uncomfortable being recognized in any kind of way as skilled or different from the group. Or later in adolescence, if our belonging was dependent on high performance, competition, dominance, we get the message that I have to lead or win or be the best in order to be accepted by the group and to belong, then as an adult, we can stay hyper competitive. We struggle to be a team player. We have to be the star. We have to be the captain. Being average is seen as being a total failure. So there's it's that tension between being a part of the group and also being an individual. And of course, all of us have to go make something of ourselves in the world. We have to bring our gifts out into the world. And we get asked all the time as kids, like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like this, how that manifests was rooted in adolescence. And of course, all of it is built on all the stages that came before it. And I mean, I talk to clients all the time, as I've coached people in the corporate world who have lots of complexities at this stage. Maybe they feel like they're not being recognized enough. Maybe they don't want to be the center of attention. Maybe they're too competitive. Maybe they surrender way too easily. Maybe they don't really have any clear idea of what the heck it is they want to do, or they don't like what it is that they're doing. Like there's all kinds of ways that this stage gets complicated and unclear, or it gets a little messy.
I think each of us need to wrestle with the tension around our gifts and come to a place that we recognize that our gifts aren't meant to make us greater than the others around us. Mm-hmm. Like that's not the measure in our well-being or success. Mm-hmm. It's not our gifts. But maybe a shift from that negative way of seeing our gifting to seeing that they are a part of a whole. And because they're part of a whole, they're meant to be shared and given to others, not just for me, myself, and I as one individual. And that makes me think about our trip to California a couple years ago and our visit to the redwood forests. Yeah. And here are these amazing pine trees that are towering 300 feet plus up in the air and are hundreds of years old. And like some of them are big enough that a car can drive through.
Yeah.
the hole in them.
Yep.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's amazing. And it's not because like the redwood trees are not able to grow 300 plus feet tall because individually they have roots that provide that stability.
Mm.
The reason they're able to thrive and continue to grow and stand for hundreds of years is because they are a part of a forest of other trees that are also hundreds and hundreds of feet tall. And that's why they're able to stand, is because of the interlocking roots of the whole and not I'm here standing on my own mentality.
That's great. That's a great pointer. Well, and it just feels so much better to be a part of a group or situation where the gift we're giving is received by others and celebrated. It's like it brings us more deeply into the group connection as opposed to the energy of, I have this gift and look how special I am. And I am, it's like I am God's gift to the world, that superiority. Like that is so isolating and empty. Like it's nowhere near as satisfying.
It's an adolescent way of looking
Yeah.
at life. It's compare, compete, prove.
Yeah.
Versus the wisdom of nature.
Yeah.
And a honeybee at work in a meadow is just as beneficial to the meadow by going from flower to flower as it is to its own calling and mission of gathering pollen and then being a part of creating honey in a hive. There's a team building exercise that I've done ropes courses and other activities and such where you sit back to back with someone and you interlock your arms as you're sitting back to back and you're putting pressure against one another. So you're leaning against one another and then with your feet, you're slowly pushing against the back of your partner and you're both slowly beginning to stand up and elevate and raise yourselves together. And that is the Three Musketeers motto, all for one and one for all. We're able to stand as we not, again, power over or overpower, but it's using our power with that helps the other rise with you.
Yeah.
And with me.
That's great. I love that. Well, and I love the way that this whole developmental journey is about finding our place in the world and contributing to something greater than ourselves and to belong very deeply. And it also, no wonder there's so much, I think, of AI and the angst over job security. Our gifts and our work in the world is incredibly important. And we're all, it's almost like when there's not clarity and wisdom and understanding at this layer of our development, then of course we're going to get all whacked out and confused and concerned and reactive or maybe not reactive enough. Every aspect of our society is a reflection of each of our own individual psyches. And so I think it can be helpful to understand how our bodies and our minds develop so we can better understand what's happening outside of us and within us, and then navigate a little more skillfully.
And one of the lines that we have repeated over and over again, and the sentiment has come out in many different ways is to find the elders in your life who have recognized each of these signposts in their life and have gone back and cleaned up and done the work around each one in their body and can give you a mirrored, felt sense as you sit in their presence, that in their body you can recognize in your body, oh, yeah, this is a reality in their experience, and it's a reality that I want in mine. I think as an initiated man who recognizes these qualities in other initiated men, and there doesn't have to be a formal initiation. We find, or maybe we could say life finds ways to initiate
Yes, it does.
both the feminine and the masculine in our world today. Those folks who are not seeking greatness for their personal recognition, but rather for a communal flourishing. The community invests in the individual, and the individual returns that investment by becoming a blessing to the community. And that's the type of people that I am always on the lookout for.
Well, and I will give the reminder again that there are lots of criticisms for this body of work. I think what those are about, or maybe what I want to say is, there is no perfect, all-encompassing model that captures the fullness of human experience and diversity. However, that does not mean that we should throw them out, ignore them, dismiss them. There's a way in which we can frame our development as existing in stages. And it's very tempting to look at it like a ladder that we have to climb. And that is, it makes it hierarchical, and it's one way to hold it. It's more, I think, it's not nearly that linear. It's not nearly that neat and clean. And our maps or our frameworks don't have to be literally true down to the last letter in order to be helpful from a personal standpoint or in a clinical setting. And so I imagine everyone listening has, at least at one of these stages, been able to connect to something within themselves. Like the whole, as we're talking, it's like these are always invitations to feel in yourself, like, what's this like for me? What does your mind serve up for you? What does it remind you of? How do you respond? And that process is like, that's the whole point.
Yeah, absolutely. Perhaps the greatest gift that body dynamics offers isn't certainty, but maybe we could say it's compassion. In our experience, because this pattern or this path or this model just reminds us that we are struggling and we have struggles, and that sometimes our strengths and our way of coping were brilliant ways of adapting to our experience and helped us survive in our lives. And we also don't need to make each of these ways of looking at ourselves permanent, or we don't need to galvanize it or build an altar to it. Like, it's true in the sense that it helps illuminate our experience and give us some hints and guesses and clues as to the why behind the what
Yeah.
of what keeps happening over and over again in our life. But the invitation is simple. Just become curious about your body, your patterns, your story, and remember that growth remains possible throughout your entire life.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We are never too old to teach a dog new tricks.
Thanks, y'all, for sitting with us, walking with us, driving with us, doing dishes with us today.
Yep.
We washed a lot of dishes. Good job.
This is a long one. Yeah. I appreciate everybody's presence and attention. Even though it's out of time, it's still felt. I think it's all connected.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
Yeah.
So until next time, go feel your body, move
your body,
embrace, love, honor, celebrate, heal. Welcome.
Yes.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye. See you next time.